we were talking last hour about this feeling that we are losing somehow.
Yeah, you get this a lot from conservatives right now who just obviously we're in a tough time and a lot of things have gone wrong over the past couple of years. And there's a sort of pervasive sense of constant losing. The example I hear all the time is this example of we can't just sit here and let people have what was it? The story time, drag queen story time.
Yeah, drag queen story time.
Of course, I would agree. It's not a good thing for our society. Although, I will say it's not a recognizable part of my life. I live in Texas where there's a lot of pushback. Maybe if you're living in, downtown Portland, the libraries are quite different. But it does seem that there's this sense of we're constantly in this state of losing where in 2021, Donald Trump was president. That was still going on in this year, right? Obviously, we're seeing the results of some of the judges, and I think the legal system is held up pretty well when it comes to all of the crazy challenges that the left has brought to it in the later parts of this year. That's been, I think, a positive. And what's happening, I think now, everywhere from Afghanistan to inflation, is people are seeing the results of what happens when you go the other way. And that is likely to lead to positive things pretty soon down the road. Now, we've also talked about how far ahead many times progressives are with things like ESG, and it makes you really doubt what the future can hold. But we also should recognize that a lot of these things that we've tried to do over the years have worked pretty well. And we've pushed back and won a lot of these battles too. It's not a constant state of losing. The left isn't, this is not, it's not Samson. In a way, it is Samson, but you know what I mean? It's not this unbelievable, impossible victory for conservatives. We succeed more than I think we give ourselves credit for.
Well, we have, especially recently. I mean, there is Donald Trump succeeded. He succeeded probably better than any other president in my lifetime in getting some real changes made. For instance, the Middle East is the biggest thing. And he demonstrated a couple of things. One, you can support Israel and not have the world come against you. You can move the embassy there. But you can also get the people in the Middle East to start siding with Israel and against Hamas, Hezbollah, and terror. And he had a historic peace deal. Now it's falling apart. You don't have to negotiate with terrorists. You don't have to give them money to get them to comply with you, far as Iran. You can end wars. You don't need to have these endless, ongoing wars. What you need to do is go in and hammer the bat snot out of them and then move on. And that's how he killed the caliphate. You have people now in the conservative movement that are looking at possible war with China, possible war with Russia. And you have people who have always been very, very America first and let's go get them, that are saying, I don't want war. I don't want war. Let's mind our own business here. Let's take care of America. And thus, if we set a good example, we will change the world. That's new. We're not so hawkish as we were. Some of these things are game-changing for the Republicans. Here's something else. We don't trust the Republicans. Before we had, these rhinos that were running, Michael Steele, that were running the Republican Party. Now, I think you have voters, Republican voters, that if they had another option, somebody that they believed would actually go buck their own party, if need be, to stop playing the same game, they'd vote for him and they'd want him in. They want to get rid of these clowns in office. And it's more mature than it was with the Tea Party. We know how the game is played now. And we don't trust that you're just going to be elected and then you're going to go and do it. We watch you now. The other thing is we have been playing the game, and I see this one firsthand. I've been telling you that there are Marxists in our government and in the Democratic Party for the last 20 years. And it has been laughed, mocked, and ridiculed. I've been called a conspiracy theorist. I've been called a racist for saying that the president was a Marxist. I've been called all kinds of names. You notice nobody's denying now that Marxists are involved in our government, that Marxists are trying to overthrow the United States, that this revolution is truly a revolution. Notice not a lot of people now in the middle are denying that it seems as though the Democratic Party has been taken over by radicals and revolutionaries. That was unheard of. That's a huge, huge change. Again, have you noticed that the press isn't listened to? Have you noticed that Jimmy Kimmel, or who was it this week, Fallon, gets the president on, and he's talking about the economy, and nobody is buying into this economy lie, and nobody's watching Fallon. Nobody's watching Kimmel. Certainly nobody's watching a bunch of dancing syringes. That was terrible. You don't have the power of SNL anymore because it's not funny. It's just not funny. And it's gone through periods of not being funny, but it has now just given into we are a propaganda arm. That's all we're supposed to do is hold up the right people and make fun of the wrong people as the woke crowd decides. America isn't having any of that. That's a huge change. You're seeing movies like we talked about earlier. Movies are now starting to become what Christian movies used to be. Christian movies used to be like, okay, I got it. Stop being so preachy, right?
Yeah.
And so they always sucked. This now, that's what's happening to the left. The left is starting to make that Santa Claus thing on HBO. What is that? That claymation by Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen. It's awful. It's awful because they've forgotten that it's entertainment that is much more important than the message. You can't get anybody to listen to the message. And yet we are now starting to understand entertainment, and our message is gaining strength because A, we are starting to learn how to tell stories on the right, and B, the things that we've always talked about that were conspiracy theories or only theories are now being proven to be true. I say something now, and it used to take, 10 years before you would see it. I can tell you now about the Great Reset and tell you that I think we're really, really behind the eight ball. But 3 months later, they've called it a conspiracy theory, and they're discredited because they are actually implementing it, and the banks are now doing these things, and you can point to them, and people are paying attention to it. We are winning because people are waking up, and the sides are flipping. They had the conservatives down because they said it's all about Jesus and God, and they're forcing you to live like Jesus wants you to live. Okay, That's how they destroyed us. Well, they are forcing people into their religion, and people are understanding their religion is not based on facts. It is a faith-based religion. Just believe Fauci. That's different than science. Believe Fauci. Believe what we say. Deny what your eyes are showing you. Deny what your ears are hearing. Deny what your wallet is saying every time you go to the grocery store. Deny those things and believe us. It's not going to last.
You can't spin your way out of milk being triple the cost. You can't. The media doesn't have that sort of power. But let me ask you this. This sort of sprung from a conversation I had with my wife on this idea that there's just this feeling of despair among the American people at times. Part of this obviously is COVID from both sides, people losing loved ones and people having to deal with crazy restrictions and losing their livelihoods and all of the things associated with it. And that's part of this era that I don't think you can separate. But, it was after the Wisconsin parade incident where that SUV ran over all those people, Glenn. The out of control SUV. Out of control. We said weird. SUVs were going to kill all the planet, and there it is. But after that happened, my wife, we were going back and forth, I think, on text on it, and she said something like, what is this world coming to? I can't believe what is this? And that's a totally rational reaction to a madman running over a bunch of people at a Christmas parade, obviously. But then I as I started thinking about it myself a little bit, we, that very same weekend, had gone to a Christmas parade / festival type of thing. Unafraid. And it was awesome. We had a great time. Our community was gathered. There were people from, I'm sure, all over the political spectrum there, but everyone was great, and we had a great time, and we loved it. And at the same weekend, probably tens of thousands of communities had similar events that were fantastic, and everybody loved them, and they all left happy, and they had their hot cocoa, and their kids were, wide-eyed looking at Santa Claus, and all the things that happened all over the country for so many people. And almost all of them were not at this one parade that we all know about that was legitimately tragic and horrible, and we need to worry about and stop, of course. But it doesn't affect. It probably did not affect your life. It was a really terrible thing that happened, and it gave the sense to even my wife and myself, who were at really wonderful events that same weekend, that the whole society was falling apart. And I mean, in reality, that's not true, right? I mean,
not true.
How do we stop that?
We stop listen, and it's happening. We stop listening to the coasts. We stop listening to the coasts.
But we can't not talk about that event. We can't not cover it. It's not the media saying, okay, well, don't worry about that. They seem to not want to talk about the Wisconsin parade, right? Because it didn't feed their narrative.
Which is waking even more people up. The ones who responded, the ones who helped, the ones who are talking about it, were talking about it, those, generally speaking, are the conservatives, the conservative movement. The ones who are ignoring this clear tragedy and a flaw in their own thinking, their own system, they brought this upon this community. They're not talking about it. And by not talking about it, the people are noticing, especially the people in the town. Wait a minute, how come nobody's talking about us? How come nobody's paying attention? Yeah, how come the news rooms in America just abandoned that story? People are waking up and noticing. That's the most important thing. That's what I've been saying for years. Wake up, America. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Once you awake this sleeping giant, it's a giant. And it wins.
So is it important to have those things together? Being awake, noticing what's going on, understanding the world, but also keeping it in perspective. I mean, I think that's a difficult thing for people to do when they're barraged by it constantly on social media and everything else.
Well, that's why I think it's important for people like us to ring the bell of alarm, but also talk about our successes. I did not feel this way 3 months ago. I didn't feel this way 3-4 months ago. I just didn't think we had it in us. I was giving up on the American people. I'm not there now. I really, truly believe we are well positioned for a win.